Thank you for coming today and thank you for supporting us. One of the main things that I wanted to actually ask you was you brought up a point of empathy. I think in today's world, there's a lot of debates about creating a completely new class of individuals, particularly with AI. But empathy seems to be an emotion or a feeling that AI hasn't yet, hasn't been able to get it in place. So what are your thoughts? Do you think we will reach a point of singularity where this will merge?
I don't think so. I think there are things that are fundamentally unique to human beings, which no algorithm can replicate. It may be able to mimic it, but the depths of human empathy, compassion, especially, will never be able to reside in an artificial intelligence being of form. I may be proven wrong, but at least as far as I understand things today, I don't think so. And I think when I spoke about it in the context of education for kids nowadays, so what do you teach kids? Yes, they do have to learn mathematics. Yes, they do have to learn science and analytical rigor, but machines are already doing that, and eventually they'll be able to do that on a more complex basis, not just understanding how to process inputs, but input it themselves. Machine learning is doing that already. So what is left to human beings apart from these things? And surely these things will have value later on. How you monetize it, I'm not sure. As I said earlier, not everybody can be a counselor or a clinical psychologist, but maybe perhaps there will be other roles for human beings with these feelings, with these values, or with these abilities or traits to be able to monetize it later on when everything else has been taken over by machines.
Coming back to empathy and mental well-being, what we are noticing, at least in our industry, is that there's more and more focus on driving people to wellness related areas, because people are getting to a stage where even CXO level guys are being threatened. Large organizations are being threatened by automation and process. What happens? How do you really change? And how do we sort of readapt? So what are your points that they could actually use to actually re-change the political landscape or re-change the public policy landscape?
So, I mean, obviously, a lot of it is forward planning in public policy, where you park your resources, the kind of teaching that you need to start preparing for in the future. And that really is, a lot of it is going to be based on trends and forecasts. A lot of it is also going to be based on guesswork. So I think fundamentally, when you're designing an education system as a public policy, from a public policy perspective, you have to ensure that you can't predict everything, but you can generally get certain things. So like, what we were talking about, empathy, collaboration, teamwork, the ability to discern changes. These are things that you have to start thinking about how to teach in a modern syllabus. It's not going to be easy because, as I said earlier, you can't get everything right. But I think you have to realize now, today, that if you continue in the present trajectory, then you are actually failing an entire generation, because they're not going to be prepared in the next 30 years.
Yeah, you've actually brought up a great point. Leads me to my next question. Leaving politics aside, if all parties have to be at an even keel, and you have to think about a nation as a whole, what would those ambitions or aspirations would be to bring Malaysia as a whole?
I mean, look, I am hopeful, but I'm also in equal measure probably scared, because I don't think we are ready. And I think if you look at the ownership of technology, the strides that have been made, of course in the United States, but as you said, China, I think what I spoke of earlier about inequality, that's going to grow, not just within societies, but between countries. And I think unless we get our acts together very, very soon and start producing people who are capable of designing these things, then I think that Malaysia is going to fall far, far behind. That's a scary prospect.
Last question. So we were actually leading the technology panel. So there was a whole bunch of discussions on closing that gap. Again, as how do we bring Malaysia? We even compare, sometimes we have discussions as to Thailand in terms of industries and automation is actually way ahead as Malaysia's. Well, why do you think Malaysia has always remained in the place where it is, that it hasn't really caught up with the neighboring countries?
Well, with Singapore, you mean?
No, I'm talking about Thailand, not Singapore in general.
Well, I mean, I would argue that the comparison with Thailand would be multi-sectoral. I don't think we're completely behind in Thailand in everything. I think there's certain things that we're ahead of Thailand in. I mean, you look at automobile manufacturing, maybe that's a case study that Thailand's ahead of us, but there's certainly many things that we're much better than Thailand at. I think a big part of the reason why Malaysia perhaps never fulfills its potential, I think some of it has to do with legacy concerns, with how public policy is restricted by certain socioeconomic constraints. That has to be tackled in a way that makes it easier for us to fulfill our potential. And by that I mean I'm speaking in code sometimes, but by that I mean we have to be more brave in terms of pushing through policy that will reward merit, that will keep people here, keep people better paid, and I think that is part of the reason why I think we've not fulfilled our potential. Another reason is, of course, the lack of a strategic purpose. I'm a big fan of the strategic view of things, and I think we've simply not leveraged on our strengths strategically, and I think the whole of government or the whole of the country can be aligned to what the national strategy should be. And that hasn't been the case.
Right.
That has suffered because of politics as well. When there's a change in guard, the strategy changes, the focus changes, and you don't continue with what your strategy should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So I think those are the points that I wanted to talk to.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me the time.
Thanks.
I really appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much. Thanks.